Imagine this: a generation of children who are safer in the physical world than any generation in human history. They don't play in the streets, they're driven everywhere by parents, and they're constantly supervised. Yet, at the very same time, these children are experiencing a mental health crisis of catastrophic proportions. Rates of depression, anxiety, and self-harm haven't just ticked upward, they have doubled. How did the safest generation become the most fragile? Welcome back to the show. Today, we're dissecting a book that has sent shockwaves through schools, doctors' offices, and even the office of Barack Obama, who named it one of his favorite books of the year. We're talking about The Anxious Generation by social psychologist Jonathan Haidt. In the next 20 minutes, we're going to explore what Haidt calls the great rewiring of childhood. We'll look at the two massive shifts that happened between 2010 and 2015 that changed the human brain forever. By the end of this episode, you'll understand why our current approach to parenting is overprotecting kids in the real world while underprotecting them in the digital one. And more importantly, we'll talk about the practical life raft solutions Haidt proposes to get us out of this mess. Let's start with a date. 2010. If you look at the charts for teen mental health, they are relatively stable for decades. Then, around 2010 to 2012, the lines don't just move, they skyrocket. This wasn't a gradual trend, it was a cliff. Haidt argues this wasn't an accident. It was the exact moment when the play-based childhood, which humans have enjoyed for millennia, was replaced by the phone-based childhood. Think about your own childhood for a second. Whether you grew up in the 70s, 80s, or 90s, chances are you had unsupervised time. You went outside, you got into scrapes, you negotiated rules for a game of tag, and you learned how to handle boredom and minor social conflict without an adult stepping in. Haidt calls this free play. It is the biological primary way that mammals, not just humans but all mammals, learn to be brave and socially competent. But over the last 40 years, we've been slowly killing free play. Because of a heightened fear of stranger danger, even though crime rates were actually falling, parents began keeping kids indoors. We traded the playground for the living room. And just as we moved kids inside, we handed them a portal to a world that was never designed for them, the smartphone. This is the core of Haidt's great rewiring. We moved from a world of physical, face-to-face interaction to a world of virtual, asynchronous, and highly addictive stimulation. Think about the difference. In the physical world, if you say something mean to a friend, you see their face crumple. You feel a pang of empathy. You learn a lesson. In the digital world, you post a comment and the feedback is a like or a troll. It's disembodied. It's performative. It's not a conversation. It's a broadcast. Haidt points out that for girls and boys, this rewiring looks different, but the damage is equally profound. For girls, the phone-based childhood often leads to what he calls visual social comparison and relational aggression. Social media becomes a 24/7 beauty pageant and a popularity contest that never sleeps. For boys, the shift has been away from the real world and toward digital bubbles, largely through pornography and excessive gaming, leading to a failure to launch as they lose the drive to compete and succeed in the physical world. Now, before we get into the biological evidence and the 4 simple rules that could change everything, let's take a quick pause. If you find this conversation about the future of our children and our society important, please consider sharing this episode. Hit the follow button on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and if you have a moment, leave a review. It helps us stay independent and continue bringing these deep dives to your ears. All right, back to the science. Why is the smartphone so much more dangerous than, say, the television or the video games of the past? Haidt points to 3 main culprits: sleep deprivation, social fragmentation, and addiction. When a teen gets a smartphone, it usually goes into the bedroom. This is a disaster for the developing brain. We are seeing an entire generation that is chronically sleep-deprived because they are scrolling the void at 2 a.m. Without sleep, the brain cannot process emotion, leading directly to the anxiety epidemic we see today. Furthermore, these devices are designed by the smartest engineers in the world to be hyper-stimulating. They exploit the dopamine pathways in the brain. A child's prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for impulse control, doesn't fully develop until their mid-20s. Giving a 12-year-old a smartphone with TikTok is like handing the keys to a Ferrari to someone who hasn't even learned to ride a bike. But Haidt isn't just here to doom scroll, he's here with a plan. He argues we're stuck in a collective action problem. Every parent feels guilty giving their kid a phone, but they do it because everyone else has one, and they don't want their child to be the social outcast. To break this, Haidt proposes 4 incredibly clear, bold rules. First, no smartphones before high school. Let them have a dumb phone or a brick phone if they need to call you, but no internet-connected glass slabs until age 14. Second, no social media before age 16. Let the brain develop some resilience before they enter the shark tank of Instagram and TikTok. Third, phone-free schools. This is a big one. He argues that phones should be in lockers from the first bell to the last bell, so kids actually have to talk to each other during lunch. And fourth, bring back the play. We need to give kids more unsupervised time in the real world. Let them walk to the store alone. Let them go to the park without a chaperone. We have to trade digital safety for real-world competence. As we wrap up today's look at the anxious generation, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. We're living through a massive, unplanned social experiment. But Haidt's message is ultimately one of hope. He reminds us that the human brain is incredibly plastic. If we change the environment, the brain will follow. We don't have to be slaves to the algorithm. We can choose to rewire childhood back towards something more human, more social, and more joyful. So here is your anxious generation summary. First, we have overprotected kids in the real world and left them defenseless in the digital one. Second, the loss of free play is just as damaging as the rise of social media. And third, the solution isn't individual, it's collective. We have to do this together as parents and communities. Thank you for joining me for this deep dive. It's a heavy topic, but understanding the why behind the anxiety is the first step towards fixing it. If you're a parent, a teacher, or just someone concerned about where we're heading, I highly recommend picking up Jonathan Haidt's book for the full data set. Until next time, put the phone down, go for a walk, and remember, the most important things in life don't happen behind a screen. See you in the next episode.